She sits by the window. Outside, a bus brakes at the corner. A child laughs. Someone argues on the phone. The city keeps moving, impatient and loud. Inside, she stirs her coffee, watching the swirl of milk disappear into the dark. The chair beside her is empty. Her phone screen stays black. And yet, she doesn't reach for it. She just breathes. Is she lonely or finally free? For years, that question haunted me. I used to measure my worth by who texted back, who stayed, who saw me. I filled every quiet moment with noise playlists, messages, the glow of other people's lives. But one night, after another conversation that left me feeling smaller, I turned everything off. The silence was heavy at first. Then, something unexpected happened. It started to feel like peace. That moment when you stop trying to be seen and start seeing yourself is where everything changes. Society still tells women that being alone means being unloved. Friends ask, "Aren't you bored?" Family says you'll find someone. But the truth is, maybe for the first time, she isn't looking. She isn't waiting. She's simply living on her own time. It's 10:04 a.m. The laundry hums in the next room. A slice of sunlight lands across the floor. There's no background conversation, no footsteps pacing, no voice asking, "What's wrong?" She takes another sip of coffee and feels the warmth settle in her chest. For once, nothing is missing. A University of Toronto study found that single women report higher satisfaction with their lives than single men. Psychologists Elaine Hone and Jeff McDonald explain that women tend to develop what's called internal validation, the ability to find self-worth without depending on approval. They no longer wait to be chosen. They choose themselves. That's not loneliness. That's emotional independence. It doesn't mean shutting people out. It means no longer needing someone to fix what was never broken. She pays her own bills. She locks the door at night. She changes the light bulb, carries her groceries, learns to like the quiet sound of her own footsteps. These small things, ordinary and unnoticed, slowly rebuild her confidence. Solitude stops feeling like an empty room and starts feeling like her own space. And yet, this shift is deeper than routine. Psychologists call it self-differentiation, the ability to stay connected to others without losing yourself. It's not coldness, it's clarity. When she's alone, she can hear what she really thinks. She learns what calms her, what excites her, what she believes without the echo of someone else's opinion. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For many women, that journey begins here, not in romance, not in company, but in the morning light of their own apartment, realizing they are no longer waiting for anyone to complete them. She doesn't hate love, she just refuses to trade her peace for it. So when you see her sitting alone at a cafe table, walking home with groceries in one hand and a book in the other, don't pity her. She's not lost. She's found something rare, the strength to stand on her own side. She isn't lonely, she's home. Every woman reaches a quiet breaking point, the kind that doesn't come with tears or noise, just a pause that feels different. Maybe she's standing in the kitchen after another long night, holding her coffee a little too long. Maybe she's staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, realizing she hasn't really looked at herself in years. There's no grand moment, just a simple thought that lands quietly but deeply. I'm done waiting for someone else to make me feel enough. We grow up surrounded by stories that promise us completion. Fairy tales tell us love will save us. Movies and songs tell us that being chosen is the ultimate proof of worth. And slowly, without noticing, we learn to measure ourselves through someone else's eyes, to feel seen only when we're loved. We give, we bend, we try harder. We tell ourselves that love means patience, that silence means strength, that losing ourselves is part of the price for belonging. But then something inside begins to shift. Maybe it's after another relationship where you did everything right and it still fell apart. Maybe it's waking up one morning and realizing you've spent more time taking care of other people's happiness than your own. It doesn't feel angry, just clear. You stop chasing, you stop apologizing for needing space, you stop explaining why you want peace instead of noise, and for the first time you start to feel what it means to come home to yourself. Psychologists call this self-differentiation, the ability to stay close to others without losing who you are. It's what makes real connection possible. A study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who develop this ability have more secure, balanced relationships because they can hold love without dissolving into it. They can care deeply, but still stand steady when love changes shape. That's where independence really begins, not in isolation, but in understanding. You realize your feelings are yours to hold, not someone else's job to fix. You stop waiting for reassurance that never lasts. Because you've learned how to comfort yourself, you start choosing calm instead of chaos, truth instead of approval. You stop mistaking being wanted for being valued. It's not coldness, it's clarity. In psychology, it's called internal validation, knowing your worth without needing a mirror to reflect it back. Once that settles in, everything softens. You love differently. You no longer reach out from emptiness, you give from fullness. You no longer beg to be understood. You speak and let silence do the rest. Love becomes something you share, not something you need to survive. Maybe you've been there too, sitting in your car after a hard conversation, feeling both empty and relieved, or lying awake at night realizing you're finally tired of performing, of proving, of waiting. One day, you stop. You make tea. You turn on a song that feels like breathing. The room is quiet, but it doesn't feel lonely anymore. It feels like peace, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. And maybe that's what growing up really is. Not finding someone to complete you, but remembering you were already whole before anyone arrived. At first, the quiet feels strange. The house is too still, the silence too sharp. You reach for your phone without thinking, scroll for no reason, play a song just to fill the air. You're used to the noise, the constant messages, the half conversations, the feeling that someone, somewhere, is thinking about you. But when all of that fades, what's left feels almost uncomfortable, like you've forgotten how to be with yourself. Then slowly something shifts. You start to notice small things again, the way sunlight moves across the floor, the smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of rain against the window. The quiet that once felt heavy begins to soften. You stop fighting it. You start listening to it. And in that stillness, you begin to see how much noise you've been carrying. The voices of others, their opinions, their expectations, all layered over your own. Psychologists say solitude allows the mind to reset. Research from the University of Virginia found that moments of intentional solitude activate what's called the default mode network, the part of the brain that helps us reflect, process emotion, and find clarity. Maybe that's why, after years of rushing, you finally start to feel lighter. The constant alertness to please, to perform, to be enough starts to fade, and in its place, something quieter, steadier begins to grow. Still, there are nights when the silence feels too big. You almost reach for your phone, tempted to send a message you don't really mean. But you don't. You let the quiet stay. You let it echo. And slowly, it stops sounding empty. It starts sounding like truth. There's a peace that comes after all the noise, not loud or dramatic, but slow and certain, like the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat when everything else finally stops. You stop needing constant reassurance, not because you've closed off, but because you finally see that peace doesn't need an audience. The quiet isn't empty, it's yours. You start creating small rituals, lighting a candle before bed, taking slow walks at dusk, writing down one thing you're grateful for. Nothing big, nothing perfect, just gentle reminders that this life, even in its stillness, is enough. And one day, you catch yourself smiling for no reason, not because something happened, but because nothing did. The world is quiet, and for once, you're not waiting for the next sound. You're just here, breathing, present, at ease. So when someone asks, "Don't you get lonely?" you don't try to explain. You just smile, because they can't see what you've found, that peace doesn't mean the world has gone silent. It means your heart finally has. People notice when a woman chooses to be alone. They don't always say it, but you can sense it in the way their voices dip, in the hesitation before they ask, "Are you okay?" Or, "Don't you ever get lonely?" Some tilt their heads, trying to read your face, as if solitude must be a symptom. Others offer advice you didn't ask for, a soft warning disguised as concern. "You're too independent. That's why." As if independence were a flaw to be corrected, not a form of peace that took years to build. It's a strange truth: peace, when worn by a woman, often looks suspicious. Society has long been more comfortable with women who are waiting than with women who have arrived. A quiet woman used to be the one who stayed in her place, who listened, who smiled at the right time. But when quiet comes from confidence instead of compliance, the world doesn't quite know what to do with it. For generations, women were taught that love was their highest achievement, that softness meant needing someone, that strength was admirable only if it didn't threaten anyone else. So when a woman stands steady on her own, not bitter, not withdrawn, just self-contained, she doesn't fit the script. People can't decide whether to admire her or fix her. They call her intimidating, detached, hard to love. But what they rarely realize is that she's not difficult. She's discerning. She's learned the difference between affection that soothes and attachment that suffocates. There's a quiet rebellion in her calm, because she remembers what it was like to chase approval, to bend herself into something smaller just to fit inside someone else's comfort. She remembers the exhaustion of over-explaining, the hollow relief of being chosen for the wrong reasons. Solitude for her isn't avoidance, it's recovery. It's the space she needed to unlearn the idea that love requires losing herself. Society loves to romanticize a man's solitude, the lone wolf, the thinker, the genius. His isolation is called focus, his silence called depth. But when a woman chooses the same stillness, she's labeled cold or broken. People look at her table for one and assume it's a placeholder. They don't see that she's already full, that she no longer eats from the hands of validation. A study from Cornell University found that women who identify as self-sufficient often face subtle social penalties, being overlooked, questioned, or excluded simply because their happiness doesn't orbit around relationships. Psychologists explain that this reaction says more about society than about the women themselves. Self-sufficiency in women is often misread as arrogance because it challenges the old narrative that a woman's emotional security must come through caretaking or partnership. In reality, autonomy is one of the clearest signs of psychological maturity, the ability to connect deeply without dependency. And maybe that's what unsettles people. A woman who no longer seeks validation is harder to control, harder to impress, harder to define. She isn't playing the game anymore, the one where worth is earned through being agreeable, nurturing, or chosen. She's not waiting to be understood, she's busy understanding herself. And when a woman reaches that point, something in the old social order trembles, because she proves that fulfillment doesn't require an audience. But she's not rebelling, she's returning to herself, to her rhythm, to the quiet kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself. She still loves deeply, but she no longer confuses sacrifice with devotion. She still believes in connection, but she knows that love can't thrive where self-respect has been traded away. She doesn't need to prove her softness by shrinking. She can be gentle and grounded at once. Sometimes people mistake her peace for pride, her calm for distance. But if they could sit inside her silence for even a moment, they'd understand it's not emptiness that holds her, it's balance. She has learned to listen to her own thoughts without drowning in them. She's built a life where her happiness isn't dependent on who texts first or who stays with. Because solitude, at its core, isn't about separation, it's about sovereignty. The freedom to exist without performing, to love without losing, to stand alone without feeling incomplete. It's the space where love stops being a transaction and starts becoming a choice. So when they whisper that she's too independent, she doesn't flinch. She just smiles because she knows what they don't. Independence isn't her defense, it's her peace. And peace, when a woman finally claims it, doesn't need permission to stay. Behind every woman who loves her own company, there's a story. Not one of arrogance or coldness, but of honesty. Because after enough noise, after enough pretending, after enough trying to fit into what the world calls love, something deeper starts to rise, a quiet need for truth. It begins small. Maybe she starts noticing how drained she feels after certain conversations, how often she says it's fine when it isn't, how often she laughs just to smooth the air. She realizes how much of her life has been spent performing, smiling when she's tired, agreeing when she disagrees, pretending to need help just to seem soft enough. And one day she stops, not out of anger, but because her soul is tired of editing itself to be accepted. Psychologists call this the need for authenticity, the natural human desire to live in alignment with who we really are, not who we think we're supposed to be. Research from the University of Houston by Dr. Brené Brown shows that authenticity isn't about being perfect or fearless. It's about letting go of who you think you should be and embracing who you are. For many women, solitude becomes the space where that shift finally happens. When she's alone, she doesn't have to adjust her tone to sound more likable. She doesn't have to wait for permission to speak or soften her edges to make someone else comfortable. She can cry without explaining, dream without doubting, breathe without asking if it's too much. In solitude, she becomes honest again, not because she's hiding from the world, but because she's learning how to meet it without a mask. That's the real reason she values her alone time. It's not about shutting people out. It's about finding a place where her truth doesn't have to compete with anyone else's expectations. Alone, she can listen to her own thoughts and hear them clearly for the first time in years. She learns what feels real, what feels like her. And once that truth takes root, everything changes. She stops chasing approval because it no longer tastes like safety. She stops forcing connection because she finally understands that real connection doesn't require performance. The people who stay don't need her to be smaller, quieter, or easier. They meet her where she already stands, whole, honest, and unfiltered. That's what authenticity looks like. It's quiet, but powerful. It's not a rejection of love, but a redefinition of it. Because once she becomes true to herself, the way she loves changes too. She doesn't fall for potential anymore, she connects with presence. She doesn't mistake intensity for intimacy. She doesn't cling to being understood. She values being seen. And that's why solitude feels sacred to her. It's not a hiding place. It's a practice, a daily return to the truth that who she is has always been enough. So the next time someone calls her too independent or too private, she smiles, because she knows what they can't see, that the freedom she has now didn't come from walking away from others. It came from walking back toward herself. Strength doesn't arrive with a roar, it sneaks in quietly, often after the world has gone still. Maybe it begins on a night when she doesn't text the person who hurt her, even though she wants to. Or the morning she wakes up and realizes she's okay, even without an apology. That's how resilience looks in real life. Not loud, not defiant, just steady. For many women, this strength isn't something they were born with. It's something they had to build. It grows from moments of disappointment, heartbreak, and silence. From learning again and again that no one else can do the inner work for you. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, the positive change that can happen after struggle. Studies from the University of North Carolina found that people who face emotional loss and work through it consciously often develop stronger self-awareness, gratitude, and purpose than before. Pain, it seems, can be a teacher if you stop running from it. That's how she learns self-trust, by keeping small promises to herself when no one else is watching, by saying, "I'll be okay," and proving it true one quiet day at a time. She begins to see that healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means no longer letting it define who she becomes. Resilience isn't about never breaking. It's about knowing how to gather your pieces and rebuild with care. She learns to sit with uncertainty instead of filling it. She learns to forgive without reopening the wound. And she learns to stay soft not because life was gentle, but because she refused to let it harden her. Self-trust is what keeps her grounded in solitude. It's that quiet voice that says, "I've been here before and I know how to stand." It's what allows her to choose peace even when fear tries to pull her back into old patterns. The more she listens to herself, the less she needs outside approval to feel safe. She still feels lonely sometimes. That's human. But loneliness doesn't scare her anymore. She's learned to tell the difference between emptiness and space. One hurts, the other heals. One asks, "Why isn't someone here?" The other whispers, "You're exactly where you need to be." And that's the paradox of strength. It's born from vulnerability, from the courage to sit in your own silence and not run from what it shows you, from realizing that peace isn't something you find, it's something you build, one honest moment at a time. If I don't hold, everything is unbreakable. She's not unbreakable, she's unshaken, because she trusts herself to rise again every time. She walks to the edge of the ocean at dusk. The sky is a soft grey mule, the kind that blurs the horizon until you can't tell where the sea ends and the sky begins. The wind is cool against her skin, the waves steady and endless. For a moment, she just stands there, not waiting, not wishing, just breathing. The tide moves in and out, the same rhythm as her chest. There was a time when this stillness would have scared her, when silence felt like proof of being forgotten, when she needed noise, conversations, plans, validation to feel alive. But now, standing here, she understands something she never did before. The ocean doesn't rush to be understood. It simply exists, vast, powerful, whole. And maybe she's the same. In psychology, there's a term called self-congruence, the alignment between who you are and how you live, when your actions finally match your truth. That's what this moment feels like. After years of bending, of trying to fit, she's finally living from the inside out. Not performing, not proving, just being. The world still moves behind her, messages left unread, people talking, plans unfolding without her. But for once, she doesn't feel behind. She doesn't feel left out. She feels anchored not to anyone else, but to herself. The peace she once searched for has become something quiet and steady inside her. It's not perfect, not permanent, but it's real. She watches a wave roll toward her feet, then pull back, leaving a trace of foam that fades into the sand. Life, she realizes, is like that. Everything comes and goes, people, feelings, chapters, but she's not afraid of loss anymore. She's learned that love, like the ocean, doesn't disappear when it retreats. It changes shape, it teaches, it returns in new forms. She doesn't need the sea to define her, the narrator whispers. She is the sea. Because that's what solitude has given her. Not distance, but depth. The understanding that she can be both calm and wild, soft and strong, whole and ever-changing. As the sky darkens, she turns to leave. No grand endings, no soundtrack, no applause. Just the sound of her footsteps on wet sand, steady, certain, free. And maybe that's what real peace looks like. Not the absence of longing, but the quiet knowing that you can belong to yourself fully, finally, without apology. If solitude ever feels scary, maybe it's not emptiness you're feeling. Maybe it's the space where your real self has been waiting, patient, quiet, like the tide, ready to rise when you are. In the end, solitude isn't about walking away from love, it's about walking toward yourself. When you stop needing someone to complete you, you finally make space for connections that feel true, not forced. So if this message found you at the right time, take it as a quiet reminder. Peace begins within. Sit with yourself tonight, and if this spoke to your heart, share it so someone else can find their calm too.